Hello, and welcome to the Sovereign Collective podcast, where we bring you real, raw truth for your self-empowerment. I'm your host, Sasha Calavoda, and I believe that you can stand on your own 2 feet, but that you don't have to do it alone. I love learning from people who continually strive to raise the bar, to go against mainstream thinking, and who dare to question the general consensus. People who risk being ridiculed or even risk the loss of their professional status as they bravely question the common narratives and challenge the rest of us to expand our minds and to reconsider what we think we already know. Join me in learning how to take control of your health and your mind so that you can have the energy to think more clearly and the confidence to step up and take responsibility for all aspects of your life. We promise to never censor here because I believe you are strong enough to hear the real, raw truth to make up your own mind. If you like what you find here at the Sovereign Collective podcast, then please share with your friends and family. I so appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And now, on to the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another interview with Sovereign Collective podcast. Today, I am joined by Andi Locke Mears, and we are going into another German New Medicine podcast. This is the 5th one, and this one, I guarantee everybody's listening to this is going to learn something about themselves and the people around them. This is going to be a very, it's a, to me, confusing topic because it's so nuanced. There's so many things, but Andi is a master at the topic of constellations in German New Medicine. But first, if you haven't gotten the intro to the topic, I've interviewed Tanya Verquin 3 times. She's episode 64. We go into the basics and the intro of German New Medicine. We go to another interview is 66. We talk about the contagion idea and did you really catch that cold or is it something else going on? And then episode 92 is on hormones and looking at hormones from a different perspective that is completely different than anything you will ever hear from any doctor or health expert out there who isn't versed in German New Medicine. And then I interviewed Carroll. He was interview number 74. And that was on cancer and what is it really? That one is not on YouTube. It got pulled really fast off of YouTube. So if you want the video version of that one, it's on BitChute. Find the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, BitChute, YouTube. But you'll notice there's a bunch missing on YouTube because they slowly are getting picked off. Right. So anyways, who is Andi Locke Mears? Andi Locke Mears is you're a naturopath, right? You're trained as a naturopath.
I'm a traditional naturopath, yes.
Traditional naturopath, okay. But she describes herself as a fierce advocate of health and a myth buster. And there's a lot of myths out there. And the more you study this topic, the more you hear all this other stuff. And you're like, really? Is that really what's going on? I don't think so. But the difference with Andi, I think, with a lot of people who are versed in this material is that this is your come from, right? This is where it all stems from, and then we go from there. Whereas other people will bring that in as a consideration, but really not as the explanation and the real area to dive into to resolve what it is that you were looking to resolve. So I really find that Andi has an amazing way to explain the topic, and she can get into the nitty-gritty because it's not only, psyche, brain, organ, it's age, it's handedness, it's the time that this happened. There's so many nuances to it. So we're going to be talking about constellations. But first, Andi, thank you so much for being with me today. And I want to start with why Germany Medicine, how you got it started. And I know you refer to it as GHK. You can even talk about, how we refer to it. Why you got started, what got you into Germany Medicine? Why is that the mainstay of what you are sharing with the world these days?
Thank you so much, Sasha. It is wonderful to be here. I'm really thrilled. And I love working with and sharing this information with people who are looking for sovereignty and looking for true freedom, because this brings you true health freedom. Right. This is not a modality. And I want to say that right off the bat, because people are like, oh, it's just another modality. It is not. It is an entirely new understanding of biology, pathology, physiology, psychiatry, psychology, behavioral issues. It's an entirely new understanding. So you have to take everything you've ever learned. And I'm a naturopath. I come from the very holistic community, and you have to take everything you know and turn it upside down. It doesn't mean you get rid of all of it. It means that once you know Germanische Heilkunde, you can use it as the basis for your health for the rest of your life. And when you know other modalities, you know, oh, I'm in a healing phase of this. I think doing this herbal tincture would be really supportive for me. Or maybe I do need surgery, and now I know that I do or I do not, and so on. You know what to do about it once you know this. So, how I came into it is that I was a naturopath. I had a wellness center, and I was constantly getting new certifications to help my clients. I was doing all kinds of herbal therapy. I had a full herbal apothecary. I did homeopathy. I had a colon, I was a colon hydrotherapist. So
Okay.
let's clean up the colon. And a whole room full of detox toys that people could use, far infrared sauna and all kinds of things. And it was 2008, and I'd had my center for several years and was again going around the country getting certifications. And yet another thing, a lot of nutrition. Did a lot of nutrition. Started with nutrition in the 70s.
Wow.
And so then I started intuitively, it's like, okay, what is this? I'm hearing about this thing called GNM. What is this? And I bought the book. And if any of you have ever seen the book, you look at it and it's like, oh my gosh, it made no sense to me. And I was thinking, well, I'll just read the book. And if I like it, I'll share it with my clients because I don't have time to go for yet another training. You can really
That
get,
one specifically.
sorry?
Sorry, which book is that one specifically?
It's called the Scientific Chart Book of
Okay.
Germanic New Medicine. It is Dr. Hammer's book, and it looks like
Ah,
this for those of
okay.
you who are seeing this as a video. And you see the chart behind me, it's the same information, but a lot more in the book. So it's a confusing book. It's written in medical language in German that's translated into English. And it's like, wow, okay, this is complex. I had the book for a solid year. And I would get it out every few months thinking, I'd psych myself up. Okay, I have a master's degree. I can do this. I can figure this out, right? It's like all the mind things we go through, and I couldn't figure it out. So my intuition was literally shouting at me to go and get trained. So I was in Maine. The nearest training was going to be in Montreal. And so I drove that 5 hours to to that training. And in the first 30 minutes of that training, I totally understood the book and how
Wow.
to use it and how to read it. So it was literally a key in the lock, and that weekend changed my life and changed how I worked with my clients. So I got back on on a Monday night, Tuesday morning, my first client. I'm doing what I normally do, and yet I pulled out this book and I started reading from it and sharing information from it. And that's when I kept doing that and got a lot more advanced training, went all over the world for that, have worked with some fabulous people in this industry. So let me go into the name because there's a lot of misconceptions about that. We see it as in English as German New Medicine. It has never been called that.
Oh, oh, okay.
It's close, but it's not the same. And so when Dr. Hammer discovered the five biological laws of this work, he called it Germanische New Medicine. No, I'm sorry, he called it New Medicine. So it's new medicine, the new medicine. Well, that was quickly plagiarized by many.
Hmm.
It's a general name. So he added the word Germanic on it, Germanische. And Germanic is not Germany.
Yeah.
Germanische, Germanic are the indigenous tribes of Europe. So think of us here in America, our Native Americans, that conjures up visions, right? Well, think of the same thing, but in Europe. It's the Germanic tribal people who lived in harmony with the earth.
Ah,
Or
okay.
the Romans took over and imposed their value system on the Germanic people. So he knew this. He had a master's degree in theology. He understood how the world ticked in a
Ah,
very rooted way. And he knew that this was of nature, that all of he discovered was part of nature. And he knew that the tribal people where he lived were the Germanische, the Germanic. So he then named it Germanic New Medicine, Germanische New Medicine. And so that was, he was then you know, put into prison twice, imprisoned because he was healing people without chemo and radiation. And that's, of course, not acceptable. So, so they finally, they decided, well, we'll let you out, but you have to renounce everything. And he said, I'm not going to do that. So he lived in exile, had many attempts on his life, and he lived another quite a few decades and until he passed. So because of what the medical community establishment did to him, he wanted the medicine part taken off. And so that's when he changed the name finally to Germanische Heilkunde. Heilkunde is a blended word, which I hear they do in German a lot. They take two words and stick it together and they give it a different meaning. And that's normal for them. And so it invokes a lot of different words such as healing and holy and knowledge and skill in that Germanic Heilkunde word. So that's the history of the
Okay.
language of it, the title of it.
Fascinating.
So I always try to teach my students, call it by what Dr. Hammer really wanted it called, and that was Germanische Heilkunde. And it's really not that hard to learn. It's just we're not familiar with that language.
Right.
So,
I remember hearing an older interview where you still weren't using that, and you didn't know how to say that yet. So okay, I'm going to practice saying that GHK, at least GHK.
yeah. GHK, or even if you said Germanic New Medicine, that's at least
Right. It's
closer.
more true. Right.
It was never about German or Germany.
Right. Okay, that's good to know. Fascinating.
There
Fascinating.
you go.
So now we've talked about the intro with my first interview with Tanya, but maybe give your quick elevator speech as a recap on the overview of what this body of knowledge is.
I'll do that as fast as I can here. And what I always like to do is the very beginning story. So very, very quickly, Dr. Hammer was a regularly normal trained physician in Germany. Got a phone call one day. His teenage son was accidentally shot while on vacation. He and his wife, who was also a physician, went to their son's side. Over 25 operations, and 4 months later, his son dies in his arms. After a few months after that, he's diagnosed with testicular cancer. And he's always been a very healthy guy. And he's not a mind body spirit guy. He's a pragmatic German. He got through surgery. He actually was given a 1% chance of survival. He had, quote, metastases throughout his body.
Oh.
And he did some testicular surgery, got through that, and he was fine after that. He then was working at the University of Munich and with cancer patients. And this is just a few years later, the early 80s. And he was looking at all their cancer and thinking, okay, I'm going to look at the brain as the cause of disease. No one had ever looked at that before. Well, it was the early 80s. We had a CT scan. It was the new toy. So he took the CTs of all of his patients, his cancer patients, and they all had a circular lesion or a circular ring in their brain somewhere in different locations. He started talking to them. What's gone on in your life? All the men with testicular cancer, like him, had all experienced a profound loss of a loved one prior to their diagnosis, just like him. And so on and so forth. He gathered all this knowledge. He talked with them. He looked at their CTs. He looked at their medical history. He realized that people who had the same type of distressing event prior to their diagnosis all had the circle in the same place in the brain, and they all had the same identical diagnosis. And there were no exceptions to this. From this, he determined the 5 biological laws, and that took him years. And he created a post-doctoral thesis that was rejected over and over again, even though he won in court many times to have it be presented. But this was the University of Tübingen, which was founded in the mid 1400s. I mean, it's hundreds of years old. It's one of the venerated institutions in Europe, and they refused, where he also got his undergraduate, master's, and his medical degrees. So they knew him well.
Mm.
And they would not let him present his postdoctoral thesis that proved this, because they said to him eventually, if your findings had been 95% accurate, we could have let you present. But because they were 100% accurate, we couldn't let you. because that meant that the University of Tübingen would be the ones to tell the entire Western medical model that they were wrong,
Oh,
and they couldn't do that.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So so therefore that gives you the framework. This is information they don't want you to know, and they haven't wanted you to know, and that's why they put him in prison a few times and tried to kill him a few times. And that's why it's much more grassroots and it's taking off here in North America much more than in Europe,
Oh,
although it's active over there as well, but they have a lot of old history with it. We
oh.
do not.
Mm.
So we can bring it forward in a way that's brand new, like most countries can't bring it forward like we can. And so that's what we're doing, is teaching this at a grassroots level to let people know, hey, once you know this, once you take, once you learn the basics, you know more than any physician on this planet what the cause of every disease is, how it progresses, and how it finishes, and what to do about it. That's powerful information.
Well, that is powerful information. Too powerful, apparently. So,
Yes, too powerful. So we keep under the radar as much as we can.
right. And that's why I love presenting this to my audience because we are so driven by fear. There's so many messages of fear out there from all angles. And when we can just turn that off and look at things from a totally different perspective and the confidence it brings, and imagine raising our children from day one
Oh
from
my
that
gosh.
mindset,
Yes.
right?
That is what we need is we need to, my passion is to reach parents. So if they can raise their children with this innate knowledge, they will rarely need to go to any sort of, healthcare facility and see any sort of doctor because their 5-year-old will know more than any physician. Literally, and that is body sovereignty for the
Right.
rest of that child's life.
100%. Love it. Love it. Okay. So we're going to tackle to me, anyways, the very confusing and complicated but fascinating concept of constellations. So when
Woo!
I talk about this, I tell them, oh yeah, and they think family constellations. They're thinking a totally different thing. We're not talking about that here. We're talking about what's happening in the brain when you're experiencing multiple conflict shocks and how that presents itself. So Andi, what are constellations from a GHK perspective?
Yes, that's great and perfectly wonderful to differentiate. This is not family constellations. Well, that's great work. That's not the same thing. Again, there's nothing like this on the planet. So let's get back to the story of Dr. Hammer. Once he figured out, and if you see the chart behind me or you see the book, he figured out the biological conflict shock that starts every quote dis-ease that we have on this planet. Once he mapped out the entire brain, that was done. Then he turned his attention towards, what about mental illness? His first job out of med school was in an insane asylum, was in a mental health institution that was pretty horrific. And he saw these people being treated like animals. And that never left him. And so, again, this is decades later. He figures out everything on this chart. And then he turned his attention towards, we got to figure this out too. Maybe this mental illness has a biological component to it as well. So he started the way he always does. He gets in thousands of CT scans and he looks at it. So he had people with diagnoses, all kinds of mental health diagnoses, depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, or narcissism, all of it, all of it. And he looked at their CT scans because this is 100% verifiable. That's what the University of Tübingen didn't appreciate. This is 100% verifiable and accurate. And he could figure out by seeing the different relationships between the circles in the brain, he could see different changes in behavior. So, what this means is let's divide your brain into two hemispheres. We've got a right hemisphere and a left hemisphere. As a right-handed female, my first conflict in the territorial areas, which are in the temporal lobe, there are let's say five circles, potential circles on the brain in the temporal lobe. My first one will always be on the right side because I'm a female, and that's the female side. The left side is female, the right side is the male side. We each have a territory, the female territory and the male territory. Those are very different. And so, I'll get to that in a minute. So if I have a conflict shock on one hemisphere, now I'm conflict active. So my brain hemispheres are normally vibrating in sync, but then when I get a conflict, I've got one hemisphere that's conflict active. So now I'm focused on it. I'm waking up in the middle of the night trying to find a solution, and I'm in fight or flight. So when we're conflict active like that, imagine if you then have another biological conflict shock. It's not going to impact in the same hemisphere that's already vibrating out of sync from its normal natural rhythm and out of sync from the opposite hemisphere, which is still vibrating in its natural rhythm. My second biological conflict shock will impact in the opposite hemisphere, which now means my two hemispheres are vibrating out of sync from each other and out of sync from their normal natural rhythm.
So are these the same type of conflict shocks that have to occur?
Nope.
It doesn't
Nope.
have to be.
Can be totally different. You could have let's call it you're having a problem with your boyfriend breaks up with you. You have one here on the side, on the left side, and we would call it a sexual frustration, even though it's not about sex. It's a bad name from an English perspective. But let's say that 3 weeks later, we're still really upset with that. We're conflict active with that. But then we lose let me think of a good one. Now I think there's a burglar coming into my house, and now I've got some scare fright, or basically it would be a territorial fear. That's a whole different conflict that impacts on the opposite hemisphere.
Still territorial. They're both territorial?
They're both territorial.
Okay.
That actually would not be a constellation. So let's go to, it would be a second sexual frustration conflict. Let's say our boyfriend leaves us, and then an older boyfriend gets in touch with us, and we get our hopes up and then dashed. And so now we've got two of these going on, one in each hemisphere. And so we have constellated behavior at the impact of this second conflict.
But it is still a territorial conflict, though, right? It's not
territorial. It doesn't have to be territorial. So it could be in the brainstem. It could be in the cerebellum. It could be in the cerebral medulla.
And then you're still constellating, though you have two totally different.
Constellated, right? So let's do a brainstem one. Let's say that you lose your job, and you interpret that as I'm not going to have money to eat. So that impacts in your liver parenchyma. And let's say that's going to impact that you don't have enough money coming in. So it's going to impact on the right liver parenchyma relay that's in your brainstem. And so now you're concerned about having enough food to pay for, having enough money to pay for food.
Okay.
And then let's say something else happens. 3 weeks later, you thought you had a job and you didn't, and that happens over and over again. And now you've got an indigestible morsel conflict, and or you're hearing, let's see, something that you want to get rid of. So now we're going to be on the left side. You've got one on the right side in the brainstem. You've got one on the left side. It could be something you want to get rid of. I want to get rid of this job that I've taken that now I hate. I want to get rid of it, but I took it out of desperation.
Yeah.
And so now you're constellated. And so once you constellate with that, you're going to have some disorientation. You're going to be consternated. You're going to be stunned, bewildered. It's going to be hard to get through the day, even.
Okay. So what I'm trying to clear, sorry, just for my understanding, is in order for you can't have like a temporal lobe one and then a brainstem one. That's not a constellation, right?
At this point in time, no. It's a possibility that it could be discovered, but at this point, both of them will be in the same cortex.
Okay.
Both in the brainstem, both will be in the cerebellum, both will be in the cerebral medulla, both will be in the cerebral cortex.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Now I get it. Thank you.
Okay. Right.
One more question.
Yes.
What about the third one? What about the fourth one? What about when they keep on happening? Then what happens?
Oh my gosh, yes, that's a great question. So this gets a little more complicated. Let's say you are a right dominant person, and so your first one impacts for a female is going to impact, well, again, I'm doing territory, but for the territory, that's where this comes into play more than anything. And let me before I answer that, let me describe territory.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Okay, because that's going to be an important fundamental basis. So that gets us to our biological needs. The biological need of a male is to provide, protect, and to love. The biological need of a female is to be provided for, to be protected, and to love. Because females have value at birth. We are the ones who give life. Males do not have value at birth. They have to acquire their value, and that's by acquiring territory, their job, their home, their wife, their kids, their community. They have to acquire that. We have it innate. So a man's territory is about protecting and defending and keeping safe those who are in his territory. And so you can think caveman here. It's okay because we are still hardwired like cavemen. If the neighboring village comes over to whatever, take our food source, it's not the pregnant women who are going to fight, it's the men who are going to go after these guys, right? It's not the women who are, taking their babies in the back of the cave to keep them safe. The men are going to be out front and they're going to be the ones defending. That's normal, that's natural. We are still hardwired that way, even though it's not politically correct.
Through political correctness.
Yeah, right. So women have an inner territory because our innerness, our inner beingness is the place that we feel safe and secure, and we feel safe enough and secure enough to have a child with this man and to give birth to this baby and to raise this child. And that place where we are safe and secure to do that is a female territory. It's much more inward. A male territory is outward. Okay. So getting back to your question which was what? It was,
Well, because it doesn't stop at two. The third,
it doesn't stop at two.
yeah.
So the first one for a right dominant female, the first one will impact in the left side, and I'm in the territory now. The second one will impact in the opposite one. Whichever one is more intense, the third one will go to that side.
Oh,
Usually it's the second one that's more intense because it's the more recent one.
okay.
So we've started to downgrade the first one. Let's say it's weeks later, it's months later, and we're downgrading it. And now we have another one that's a little fresher and it's a little more intense. Not always, but oftentimes. And so your third one, if that comes soon after that, will impact in that side that has more accentuation. It's opposite for left dominant people. So if I'm a left dominant female, it's going to be a female conflict that I experience, but because of what we call the night hop, it's not going to land in my left hemisphere. It's going to go to the opposite hemisphere, which means it's in the left hemisphere, and that changes your hormones profile in a different way than if this gets really complicated.
Yes.
It does, yeah. But let me just say that for a left-handed female, the first one in the territory will impact on the right side. That side's closed. The second one will impact on the opposite side. And because they're right dominant, the third will always go away from the side of accentuation. In this case, if that more recent one is accentuated, it will now go to the opposite side. So a left-hander's brain hemispheres are a little more balanced than a right dominant person.
Interesting. Ah,
Right dominant can really pile it up on one side. So I'll also say that the right territorial side is I'm going to say once that's impacted, the people have more passiveness. They're more inward. We could say depressed. It's not a totally accurate word, but they're more inward and inwardly focused versus somebody who has a conflict on the left side, which then increases testosterone. Now it makes them more active, more manic, more outgoing, more driven. So it changes our behavior right away. At least in the territory, it does. If it's not in the territory, it's in the brainstem, it's in the cerebellum, it's in the cerebral medulla. The behavior doesn't change until, other than being conflict active. But then once we have the impact of that second conflict, we can then see the constellation very clearly, which is also true for the territories, but the territory just has extra stuff in it. Let's just make
Okay.
it easy.
Because that's the one that's changing your hormonal status, how
Right,
you view the world.
right.
Right.
Right. So now it changes your hormonal status. So most girls in North America have their first territorial conflict, single conflict, and I'm talking, well, right and left dominant, but for right dominant, it will impact on the left side. And instantly they will have a drop in estrogen, and now they are tomboys. Now they're going to want to play sports.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're when their
So, and
period.
then the other girl would become more girly, would be more.
Correct. Yeah, and I want to also say that they won't start their menses at age 11, which is the normal age to start your menses,
So it'd be pushed off later?
because they have a drop in estrogen. Yes, they don't have enough estrogen to start their cycle. So the opposite is true for a left-handed girl who it will still be a female conflict, but it will impact on the right territorial side, which lowers her testosterone, increases her estrogen. Now she's much more feminine, and she could actually start menses earlier than 11, and that would be normal.
So it's amazing the details he has come out with, Dr. Homer, like very specific ages, things that happened before this time, when you have your babies. It's just mind-boggling how he deciphered all of this information.
Right, and I totally agree. It boggles my mind every single day. And realize he's looking at tens of thousands of CT scans, and he's looking at what's the same in all of them and what's different and why.
Right. And
That's
he's
how he
reading them
figured this out.
differently than a Western doctor would be reading them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So how, oh no, we should focus in one specific area of the brain, but how does who's not constellated, first of all? Anybody?
Well, that's a great question. We have probably about 1% of males are not. And generally, at least they'll have one conflict in the territory. And the first time a right-handed male has one conflict in his territory, his testosterone drops a little bit, so his libido will drop a little bit. And he's what we would call a second wolf. Well, in a hierarchy, look at the animal kingdom, because we mirror the animal kingdom. In a wolf pack, you can't have two alphas in charge. Only one alpha, but you've got to have a lot of beta wolves, and that's what we have on the planet, and that's normal and natural.
Mm,
There's always one leader. It's a little different for females because we want 100% of females to be alpha.
we do.
We do. And an alpha female is not what you think.
Okay, what
An
is it?
alpha, an alpha female is going to be very much more inward, more negative, more pessimistic, and more passive.
Really?
Yes,
Alpha female will be that that doesn't sound
correct.
right. You want them all to be like that?
We want them to be able to raise their babies, and they need a safe place to do that. And so they're going to be looking after their children, making sure they are safe. We want women that have those attributes who can do that and focus on that. So yes, they're going to be more passive, and because they know the man is leading and they want the man to lead, because if the man's leading, they can focus on what they do best.
Right.
And so again, this is not PC at all. And
Mm.
what we find right now is that I always have people take a look at our society right now. Our society is full of women who are driven, who direct the household, who direct their men, and who take charge. Because over the past 100 years, our biological needs, while they have stayed the same, our circumstances have changed. We can now support ourselves. We can now get an education. When we do all that, it leaves the men with no job. And so we have a lot of second wolves. It's mostly second wolves anyway on this planet because they've all had a territorial conflict. And so now we have men that are emasculated. When a woman is in charge of her household and in charge of her man, she emasculates him further. So we have a lot of men with fertility issues right now. We have a lot of women with fertility issues. This is why. It's one reason why.
Yeah.
So we have a course called the Freya course. It's not my course, but it is presented by a person who worked with Dr. Hammer. And it teaches women about men because we don't understand men. We think we're supposed to do it all. We're supposed to get that education, have that job, have those 2.3 kids, and be able to handle it all and still work full time and do it all. And as any woman who does it all knows, it sucks.
Nobody wins in that situation.
Nobody wins.
Right.
Nobody wins, especially the children, because we are no longer providing that safe, secure place where they have an identity and a place that they feel secure. Our kids are not secure, and they constellate younger and younger. We have a lot of behavioral issues now. We have a lot of people choosing different kinds of lifestyles, young people, very young, wanting to change their body structure because they don't believe they are who they are. We've got children who have lost their identity because they don't grow in a safe environment. They're not living in a safe environment in their own household, let alone their schools.
But now, so I've went to university and I did this and I got, but I can still recognize, like I created when I was pregnant, I was like, holy crap, this is a really important job here. We are bringing forth healthy, well-adjusted life for future generations. I could see that that was a big deal. I created a program called Your Conscious Pregnancy and Parenting Guide. I interviewed all these people so we don't mess our kids up. I could still see that, and I could still value
Yeah.
the importance of being a mother and feeding my child and raising him and not putting him in the school system. And I could still see that, but I've got to be constellated too. I would.
Right. We all are. And your instincts are right, Sasha, because you're right. We have that inside of us. It's inside every woman. It is inside every woman. And if it isn't, they're heavily constellated and it's gone.
Okay.
Okay. They're the ones who probably will not marry and won't have kids.
Well, and even I think they're probably more prone to the whole programming. I mean, the whole women's lib thing, what a psyop. The whole
Right.
idea that a woman has to do it all and you don't need the man. It's like, are you kidding me? I am
Right.
so thankful for my man that fixes things and lifts things and takes care of it. And it's like, I got this. He's like, I got your back. It's like that feeling that that gives me is irreplaceable.
Absolutely. And I applaud you, Sasha, because that is true. That's true freedom. You're living in your femininity. He's living in his masculinity. And so you're not suppressing his testosterone. He's not suppressing your estrogen or creating thus more testosterone. So that is living in harmony. That is how we need to be living.
For it. Okay, so and also the idea of like changing body parts and that we also are living in a culture that is preying on these children. Like,
Yeah.
would
Yes.
they really choose that if they weren't being preyed on? Because we know that they're very confused already. They're not happy. They're being programmed in a system
Right.
that's just shuffling that
Look
way.
at social media and the impact that's had, and it has not been positive. We all know that. We all know that.
Of course.
And it's not a safe place for kids, especially because they're much more vulnerable as a child
Yes.
to experiencing conflict shocks.
Right.
And so it is our job to protect them.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, a big failure of our society is not protecting our children.
Agreed.
So if we're constellated and we know that we're behaving in a certain way because of the constellation, but we haven't resolved first of all, let's talk. We'll talk about this, and then you can talk about how we resolve them and if we want to resolve them. But can we just change our behavior just by being an observer without resolving?
Yeah, absolutely. And so generally we will try to resolve the programs that are in the brainstem and the cerebellum and the cerebral medulla. Those are certainly absolutely fine to find a solution to and solve. And so once you do, your behavior changes and you're much more balanced.
So what kind of conflicts would those be like?
So the brainstem ones will always display consternation. You're bewildered, you're stunned. Well, that's hard to sustain, right? You look at elderly people and they often look like this all the time because they have two brainstem, programs running. The next one would be cerebellum, and these are ones that, um, yeah, these are about protection. And so, yeah, cerebellum, we've got cerebral medulla. They all have a slightly different flavor to them. When we look at the cerebral medulla, we're boosting yourself up. So these are self-devaluations, two of them. You feel self-esteem that is incredibly low. And so the super sense, the compulsion that we have then is to boost ourselves. We're going to start bragging. I am I am the sickest person on this planet. Even if it's a really negative brag, it can still be it's the same thing. Or it can be, well, think of Muhammad Ali. I am the greatest. Well, I would assume that most Olympic athletes would have to have this because it gives them the drive to really succeed. So I'm not saying these constellations are bad or wrong. They're not. If you're not able to function in society, then, if somebody loves you and really wants to help you feel better, then maybe helping to find a solution would be a really good thing to do. But I want to point out that we don't always just resolve these and solve them. There's times you want to, and then there's times where it's probably not in your best interest to do that. So just observe yourself when you see a change in behavior, and especially if once you learn this work, then you understand, okay, I just had a big change in behavior. What the heck just happened to me here? And once you figure that out, even if you don't know this very, very well, you can start to see, well, what just happened and how do I change my relationship to it? And that's something that we can all do, is just observe ourselves. The more we observe ourselves, we can see oftentimes a change in behavior many times a day. That's normal, unfortunately, for us now.
Hmm.
I want to get back to the cerebellum program because those are not quite as primitive as the brainstem ones, which are all survival based. But the cerebellum are all about protection. And so this is about when we have two conflicts in our cerebellum, we now have an emotional rigor mortis. We're emotionally dead. We can't feel our emotions. Well, that's protecting you. All of these are protecting you. They're putting you into a state, a mental state that makes you more easily able to cope with what just happened. It's two conflicts. That's a lot for someone. And now we're in a different mental state and we have a different perspective. Now I have no emotions. Well, you might think, my gosh, that's just terrible. And I will tell you how many therapists have this constellation and they make fabulous therapists because they don't get emotionally involved with their clients.
Right.
There are gifts to every single one of these.
But they can be debilitating if you want to, right? Like what's the line there? Like I can see it giving you your personality and your gifts to where you can serve, but then there's the mental institutions, then there's the people that can't stop crying, then there's the people that have no confidence in themselves and don't try anything. Like
Right. So these are the folks that are more heavily constellated, or they've stepped on a track that's very big. And that's why learning this is really important so that you know your tracks and triggers and you know when you turn on a constellation.
right.
So when you know that and you find yourself crying day after day after day and you just can't get out of your own pity party or whatever it is you're experiencing, that huge depression and angst, then you realize, okay, I've just constellated. What is it? What just happened that made this happen to me? There's always something. You'll always find it, especially if it's a day or two ago. When you can find that and talk to someone about it, it gets you out of the isolation we often feel when we're constellated. And especially if you can talk to someone who knows Germanische Heilkunde, they're going to know exactly what's going on with you and can help you. Then you recognize whatever it is that happened and you start to talk through it. And as you talk through it, you start to downgrade it. And as you downgrade it, your mood shifts.
Okay. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's totally resolved. It could be just downgraded.
Could be downgraded to the point where then you find a biological solution and resolve it. Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned, so I'm sure people are wondering why you would say you wouldn't want to resolve. Is that due to physical danger, or is that due to, what is that due to? Why you wouldn't want to resolve?
Right, that's a great question. So, for the programs that run in the brainstem, the cerebellum, and the cerebral medulla, they run on a physical level as well. So, there's cell growth or cell loss in the conflict active phase. Being constellated is two conflict active phases. So, it's what we call double sympathicatonia. So it's double conflict activity. So you are growing cells or losing cells on a physical level, but not as intensely as if it was a single conflict. So there's still physical changes, but not as severe or intense as one conflict. It's nature's way of helping us out. I'm going to come back to the territory now. In the territory, there are two programs there, and it's one constellation that when we experience this, we want to just be aware of if we solve one of them, because we might. So it's the sexual frustration for women, two of those, or two territorial losses for men. It's the same relays in the brain. It's just territorial loss and sexual frustration are the same thing. One's a female perspective, one is a male perspective. The male perspective is there's someone in the territory that he's lost. For a female, it's not being safe and secure in her position, her marriage, perhaps, her relationship, so that it's not a safe place to raise her babies.
Okay.
Okay, it's the same thing, just from a different perspective. Now, if you have two sexual frustrations or two territorial losses, you are now in the post-mortal constellation, which means now you're contemplating death. What happens after you die? Think of somebody like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who did amazing research into death and dying. She would have had this postmortal constellation. It's not like this is bad or wrong. It gave us huge amount of information from her studies. So again, that's not bad or wrong. Now, these are the two conflicts, though, that impact the coronary arteries and the coronary veins. So
Ah,
in the epicrisis, it could be a coronary artery heart attack, or it could be the coronary veins is a pulmonary embolism in the epicrisis. So as long as you're running both of them in your postmortal and that's still lightly active, you're fine. If you had a lot of conflict load build up before you constellated, let's say a man loses his job, and at 8 months later, he finally finds another one. He's got 8 months of a conflict load. He's lost a lot of cells in his coronary arteries. He's had angina for 8 months, steady. Then he constellates, and that pulls him out of that just a bit. So it doesn't run as intensely, and it runs even less on the territory areas. But if he were to lose that job, he's only got 1 month left. At 9 months, you don't survive that epicrisis, which is a coronary artery heart attack.
at
So,
9 months, so you know exactly how long you have to be active before it's.
so that's when
A
you
lot of
keep
people
track
have
of
heart
your.
attacks and survive, but
Absolutely, most do. It's rare to die from this.
okay.
Most people do resolve it or downgrade it enough so that if they do solve it, it's not an issue. They can survive it. But 9 months of full conflict activity, you won't survive your epicrisis. If you've got 4 months and you downgrade it and then resolve it, you'll survive it no problem. People have heart attacks in their sleep and
Yeah.
they didn't even realize it. I've had clients, it's like they just went in and had a heart test, and it's like, oh, my doctor told me I had a heart attack a long time ago. It's like, yeah, that happens. That's normal.
And so for people who don't know, the epicrisis is when you're in that healing phase and you go through that acute.
Right. It's that height of healing. It's pushing out the edema in the circle in the brain and on the organ level, because we've got fluid in that area in the brain and on the organ level to protect those areas while the holes are being patched in, or the cells that we grew are now they're being broken down. And so we're going to protect those two areas. When all the healing takes place that needs to take place, we then get rid of the liquid, and that's an epicrisis. A heart attack is initiated by the brain. Every epicrisis is initiated by the brain. And the associated organ sometimes has symptoms as well.
It's just so crazy fascinating. Okay. There's so many places to go here.
I know, I know.
So, okay, so let's talk about our children these days. We've got so many labels, so many codes, so many things for this learning disability, this behavior, we're living in an unnatural world,
Right,
an
right,
unnatural society that
right.
wants to give labels and that wants to, we're very attached to these things as well. And then it drives even monetary force, like so many different things.
How many? Yeah.
So, what about our children in this? I want to talk about that, and then I want to touch on the topic of age stop quickly. I don't know if we can fit all this in before we have to go, but
Yep.
that is a crazy, very fascinating topic to me. But our children and all their, whether it be, for example, reading is not my son's easiest gift. He's very easy, like he's very gifted at a lot of things, and we've loved reading, and I've read thousands and thousands and thousands of pages on, but it's one of his Achilles heels is reading and spelling, and that it's minor. It's not like he's autistic.
Right,
It's not like
right.
he's not flipping. Is like he's doing. So there's such a spectrum of this too. So let's talk just how does this impact our children, and how could we change how we're raising them from that regard?
Perfect, perfect. And this kind of gets us back to our earlier conversation as well. First of all, every single label is a conflict shock.
Okay.
Every single label. So something's impacted. And in our society, again, it happens at a very young age. Often it's preschool or under 5. Definitely for girls and boys, usually their first territorial conflict comes around 5 to 7, especially for girls. So we have a whole all our young folks are fairly heavily conflicted and or constellated, and this leads to many labels because it leads to behavioral challenges, learning challenges, all of it, speech challenges. All of those are conflict shocks. When we can learn Germanische Heilkunde, we can help to kind of unravel that and understand, oh, yeah, okay, Johnny had a hard time when he was 3, when I dropped him off at preschool, and now he had a separation conflict. Now he's got short-term memory loss, and that looks like he can't focus on things.
Mm. Huh.
Or or it maybe happened even earlier, and they can happen in utero, unfortunately. And but let's say it happened even earlier when that part of the brain was developing, and maybe it was about speech. And now they've had a conflict shock at age 2 that was for a girl, it'd be a scare fright conflict. For a boy, it would be a second territorial anxiety conflict. And now that impacts their speech, and now they have a lisp or something like that.
Wow.
Um, Separation conflicts are huge because we tend to separate from our children early. We put them in daycare, we give them to a nanny, we give them to the schools. We don't live biologically anymore. If we were to live biologically, we would have our children with us. We would live in small communities where everyone has a place and an identity and a role. We would all know our roles.
Right.
We would all work together to ensure that everyone was safe and secure. We don't have that anymore. We give our kids to others.
We do.
That is not safe for them. So they will have conflict shocks early in age, and that will impact their learning ability, their ability to uh, critically think, to memorize, to learn, basically, to have speech, to have hearing, all of it. It impacts all of it.
So
And
interesting.
we can raise very anxious children.
Oh, I see that because I work in a shop a few days a week, and the children coming in with the anxiety. Like I chose to stay home. I didn't put
Yep,
my son in daycare. I didn't put him in school. He's 16 now. He's never been given away to anything like that. But I'm
yep.
sure there's still situations where, my mom, it could be like the thing is, it doesn't have to be huge, right? It's just the
It doesn't.
perception.
It doesn't. It's the perception of that child's subconscious. It's not even the perception of their mind or their emotions. It is not. It's their psyche, brain, organ intelligence, which is part of their subconscious. So a 5-year-old waking up at midnight and coming out to the living room and mom and dad are watching a video that's full of violence and they see that, that's all it takes.
Right,
And their life is changed forever
right.
unless you learn this soon and can help them downgrade it and now feel safe again.
Right. That's why I always say, like, as a parent, I don't want to ever like, sometimes things can just be like, ugh, and you just want to just
Yeah,
them off guard, but you don't want to take them off guard, right? You don't
right,
want to be the source of their conflict
right.
if you have that viewpoint, it really changes the way. Because I was watching something, and this guy was saying, "Don't give your kids warnings." I don't know where that parent advice is, but don't warn them. It's like you basically want to ambush them, like in certain situations. I'm like, oh, whoa, 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 that's terrible advice,
Right,
right? Yeah, you might get the result that you're looking for in that moment, but have you
right,
impacted the rest of their life?
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why teaching this information to youngsters is really important. And they can learn constellations because they already know they change. They already know when they get mad or when they hate mommy, when they hate daddy. They already know this. If you can give it to them in a biological context, they will take that and they will learn how to monitor themselves.
Okay,
When
so
they do,
let's. Okay,
Mhm.
go. Sorry, ahead.
I was going to say, when they do that, now they're starting to put pieces together. And with maturity, it will sink in. They will grow and they will grow out of it. A lot of kids will grow out of it, especially with this knowledge. They'll grow out of it without the knowledge, but I think with this knowledge, they'll grow out of it even sooner and quicker.
And is that because your perspectives change as you get older, so old
Correct.
conflict won't affect you in the same way?
Correct.
Right. So it's not like you always have to dig deep and know exactly what it was and resolve that. Because I feel like that's a lot of it, a lot of people are saying. And I'm like, but that sounds very limiting to me. We're
Yeah.
not going to have a notebook with all of our conflicts and go through them and try to resolve them all. It feels very limiting to me to think that way.
Well, there's a place for that, and it all depends on, I'm going to look at what are their constellations, what are their behaviors, how old are they male, are they female? So it's a lot of factors I'm going to take into consideration, but generally you just find the track. Once you know what it is that just happened, oh, it was that phone call from my mother yesterday, then you're golden. All right, how can you see your mom in a different perspective? Can you see that can you see why your mom did what she did? And when you can start to humanize her instead of being constellated, now you can start to downgrade it.
And so the fascinating thing is this is affecting not only just mood or our depression, obsession, but also like the tomboy thing, like the goth phase, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
whether you're heterosexual or homosexual, like, right? It's
Right.
affecting.
Right. It's all the sexual orientation, it's all presentation. If kids are really looking different from their peers, why are they looking different? And the goth would have the postmortal constellation, so they're focused on what happens after death. And so they're going to look the part. That's going to be normal for somebody with postmortal. And so now you know that, and now you know how you can relate to them as well.
Right.
They're your child. Now you can really help them, just plant seeds and they can unravel it themselves.
So I'm going to get selfish here. So my son is 16,
Okay.
and the reading and spelling now, it's always been a beautiful experience. He loves stories. I've read to him for years and years and years and years. Now it's way better. Like he can read. He can read. Like it's not like he can't read. And he doesn't flip letters or anything like that. He doesn't write them
Okay.
backwards or nothing like that. But the spelling thing is a little trickier. So at it as a 16-year-old, like if I had addressed this, say, 10 years ago or 8 years ago or something, I'm sure it'd be different than what I would do
Right.
now. Like what would one do in my situation, for example, as a practical example?
Practical example at 16, I would have him learn this himself and start to unravel it himself. There's not a whole lot you can do. You can make more of an influence when they're younger because you control the environment more.
Yeah. Okay.
And so if he was, 5 or 6, you could probably help to figure that out. Probably was a separation conflict that impacted at that moment of whatever his development was when we start to put things together to be able to read. It impacted in there at that moment. And you may never figure that out, but you might. I would also look at reading as a track, that something would have happened to him when he was being read to, and now it's a track, and it's not a scary, it's something that's impacted him, and it's changed his brain a little bit. So in that moment, it's going to be hard to do.
Right. Right. Okay. Interesting.
So
Okay.
sometimes you can find that track or that original conflict shock, and when you do, that gives you more data on how to move forward.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Probably never figure that one
I
out.
mean, at 16, so we've got until age 25. When you have a
Oh,
con-
okay. Talk about that.
yeah. The earlier, though, the better, because it takes in 1 year, you'll catch up in 3 years of maturity. So if it's a territory constellation, so in those five in the temporal lobe, there's a maturity stop when we have those, which is what we see a lot of now. We have a lot of adults that have had a maturity stop, which means it's an emotional maturity stop. They can go on and have full lives and be intellectually very, very capable. In fact, they're usually very good intellectually because they lack in the emotional area.
I see
Not,
that a lot these days.
yeah, you
Okay.
do. Most of us have had maturity stops. Yes. And that impacts with cons, um, two const, two biological conflict shocks in the territory. And the impact of the second one in the opposite hemisphere, whichever one you're at, then there's a maturity stop. So you'll see 5-year-olds behaving like they're 2-year-olds.
Okay. But you
Super
can see 30-year-olds behaving like they're 5-year-olds.
correct. Now the it's closed for them. At age 25, there's no more change. So the earlier you can get to these kids, the better, because they every year is 3 years of a maturity gain if they solve it. So at age 16, he's got what, 9 more years. He'll be less apt to resolve those. It's a little bit less at this point. It's easier when you're younger to do that. It's harder when you're older. It's still possible to downgrade it though, for sure. And that way it impacts him less as he moves forward in life. Um, what else did I want to say? Again, there's nothing wrong with this, but when we see a woman who doesn't want to have children, chances are she's got a maturity stop because children are not going to want to have children.
Oh, haha.
Same thing with boys with a maturity stop. Boys don't want to have children,
Right. And so is
right?
this why? So what happens now? Because we used to have children younger. Were we more mature back then? Because now we're still having them, not as much,
Right,
but we'll have them later.
right.
So what does that look like through your eyes?
That's because we're constellated, because we've been fed all the psyop that, oh, you've got to have a job and a career and you've got to have all this. And so it puts off child rearing. Our bodies are meant to have children when we are teenagers. It's a fact. We know this. We have done this for thousands of years.
Wow.
And suddenly it's like, oh, no, no, that's wrong. Suddenly it's wrong. In the past 100 years, it's wrong. You have to get an education. You have to have a career. And then think about having kids. No, have your children when you're young, because children, when you're younger, you're going to be much more apt to be resilient. When you're 45 years old, you are less resilient. You have a lot more conflicts going on. And now you're going to raise your kids? No, raise them when you're younger, when you're fresher and you don't have as many conflict shocks.
Well, I can see myself physically being more capable as a parent, but I wouldn't have learned all these things, emotional, like mentally. So as an older parent too. So, because I had my son at 37,
Okay.
but I'm a very different parent than I would have been had I had him at 23.
Yes, you are. You are. And I'm not saying anything here is bad or wrong. I'm
Right,
saying biologically, we are meant to have our children young.
right,
We
right,
are. We all know that. We know the clock ticks, right?
for
We
sure.
turn 30, our clock is ticking. We know this. So the thing is that we don't have the society that supports that. And
Yeah,
that's the problem.
exactly. That's what I was going to say. If we were living biologically, then we would parent biologically and
Biologically.
parent properly for
Right.
what would raise a healthy
Right.
Wow.
Whereas we don't, we're constellated younger. We've got to work through our stuff. And then finally we get to a point, okay, now I think I can have kids. And now it's you're almost 30 or you're in your early 40s and you've lost, 20 years of child rearing. But that's because we don't live in a biological society anymore.
Right.
So I was at a conference a year ago, and it's a lot of folks that are into body sovereignty and good nutrition and things like that. And a woman came up to me. She looked younger, like late 40s, and she says, "Oh, my daughter is 17 years old, and she wants to get married and have a baby." And she said this to me quietly because you don't do that these days. That is not done, right? To be 17 and to want to get married and have a baby. This
Right.
is like the most mature girl that I know on this planet is this. She is listening to her biological need to reproduce. And so if we give birth before the age of 25, we gain 3 months in emotional maturity. I'm going to say that again. If a woman gets pregnant and gives birth before the age of 25, we gain 3 years in emotional maturity.
Three
So if
years.
we
You said 3 years.
sorry, 3 years. Sorry, 3 years. We gain 3 years in emotional maturity. So if we constellated age 8, we have a child young, 8, 9, 10, 11. We're now 11 emotionally. If we have another child, 12, 13, 14, we're now 14. A 14-year-old can live fine forever. That's fine. They've got abstract thinking. They can figure out life easily, easier than an 8-year-old can. An emotional 8-year-old.
Right. Right.
So that's why when this mother said this to me very quietly so no one could hear that her 17-year-old wants to get married and have a child. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to meet this girl if I could. I said, well, how is she going to manage this? Because knowing that we don't live biologically, we don't have the support system for this. So the mom said, well, we have land. And so we're the husband to be and her husband and the dad of the girl, her husband, are building a house on their property, further away, but right on their property.
Wow.
So again, this is how we do this. We are families that we've lived together or lived close together for support for thousands of years.
Right.
This is normal. This is natural. That's not how we live now.
No, not at all.
We have to have that education, that career. So now we've got money. Okay, once we have money, now we can have our kids. No. Have the support. Find the support in your family. Have children young. Then if you want to go have a career, go for it. No, nothing wrong there.
Totally opposite. That's so interesting.
Totally opposite.
And does that 25 year, is that the resolution of any constellation?
Any territorial constellation. So it's in the territory only that gives us the maturity stop. All the other constellations, the brainstem, the cerebellum, and the cerebral medulla, do not have a maturity stop. All of the other programs in the cerebral cortex, not in the territory, do not have a maturity stop. It's the 5 on each side that give us that maturity stop. And those are the ones that are about our hierarchy. Am I safe? Is this a safe place for me? It's all about that stuff. Who am I? Where's my place? Am I safe here? Our kids aren't safe. They don't have an identity. Their
No,
parents have gone work.
no. And my mom stayed home for a long time. She went back to university, I think when I was in grade 6, something like that. And I always tell people how I didn't know it at the time, but I can see it now looking back, how safe it felt to know that my mom would be home when I came home, that there would be food ready, that there would be whatever, that she was there. I never thought about it. That was normal for me. But it really changed, I think, my confidence.
Yes. Yes. And you were 12?
I think it was probably 12-ish when she went to university, but she's still always home. She was still always there. She didn't work until I was older than that. And yeah.
But she wasn't there as much at that point. Now imagine if this is a 3-year-old.
Right.
Life is not safe.
No,
Life is not safe.
it's not. And we normalize that
Right.
and we
For
expect
the
it.
past 100 years, we've normalized that. And that's what the psyop has been, that we've got to do it all. We're women, we have to do it all. We don't. We shouldn't. It
No,
hurts us, it hurts the next generation.
it does. It does. It absolutely does. And it's hurt a couple generations now. And it's just the women coming out of the home. That was, yeah, I feel like that's really where it starts to degrade.
Right.
I see that. Wow.
Exactly.
So fascinating. Well, I think I mean, this is a big, like, to learn all the different brain centers. So if somebody wants to learn more about constellations, like, there must be different classes on specific constellations. Like, how does one learn more about this if they're interested?
Yeah, so I have a basic, it's not a basic course, it's an in-depth course. There's not much in English because it's harder to understand, and it takes years and years and years to really learn this well. So I have that course that a lot of folks here in North America have taken who are now starting to work with constellations and everything. So I highly recommend that. I mean, get a firm foundation first. And know that you can't get that from a podcast or a video. You can't. Dr. Hammer knew that. You had to have live interaction because this isn't just didactic learning. This is taking everything you've always known and turning it upside down. This is not like learning acupuncture or herbal therapy. This is, again, it's learning, taking everything you've ever learned about yourself, your health, your wellness, your body, and turning it upside down.
Right,
You have to do that with live interaction.
right. So,
Once you've got that firm foundation, then add this on.
so what are your offerings, and how do people find you and learn more from you? And what are you doing in this regard for people?
Yeah, what I'm doing. So I started working online with this full time in 2012. So by the time, the the global theater of 2020 came around, I was well purposed. I was already there. And my business really skyrocketed, which was amazing. We had a lot of people find us at that point, they were all thinking, okay, what's going on? Something's not adding up. So I've developed my courses. I have a foundational course called Beyond Holistic Medicine. And I will say my website is Andi Locke, LOCKE.com. Basic course, and then I've got the advanced Beyond Holistic Medicine course, and then I've got Psychoses and Constellations, which is actually kind of my biggest course. And then I have a course for professionals who want to use this with their clients and patients.
Okay. And these
So
can be professionals of all kinds, whether you're a medical doctor, a naturopath, a counselor, a coach.
I've had all those folks. I've had physicians go through it, licensed counselors, you name it, nurses, a lot of nurses, a lot of chiropractors, a lot of moms who just want to know it well for their parent or their kids.
And are you seeing clients as well? Yes.
Yep. I've seen clients since 2009.
Wow, and you still are. And so all the places that people, if somebody wants to get hold of you, where do they go?
Right to my website and go to my contact page. It's andilocke.com. ANDILOCKE.com.
Okay. And you have an Instagram channel?
I have Instagram and I have YouTube and I have Facebook.
Okay.
That's all on my website.
And that's great. So go to the website, folks, because I know there's lots of very fascinating little clips that you post on Instagram. One that's going to be relevant for me to talk about tomorrow with somebody that I'm talking to is the whole anemia, leukemia
Ooh.
relationship. That,
Yep.
when I heard that, that is fascinating. Fascinating. So
Yeah.
that's topic for another discussion. Very, very
Um,
cool. So yeah,
awesome.
well, Andi, I think this is a great place to stop because we just got a good overview. So know, folks, that there's a reason for your behaviors, and if we can shed a light on that, then it also breed more empathy and understanding. But I do find when you see a man behaving like a 5-year-old, even if you knew that, I feel like, don't you have the wherewithal to see that you're acting like a child? Like, can they not change
Yeah.
that at 60 years old? Like, is it not possible? Like, I feel like
So that's a great observation, Sasha. And so what I'm going to say is that when we learn this work, we learn Germanische Heilkunde, especially constellations, we can have more compassion and empathy for other people. Wow, that man constellated early, probably about age 5.
Right.
And that's, that's normal. That is a survival mechanism, two survival mechanisms to help him survive. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it gave him a change in behavior.
And there's no chance for him to change that behavior, even if he gets that the light shed on it for
He
himself.
can certainly develop a skill set that will help him. Absolutely.
Okay.
When he can get to that point where, like, wow, I'm acting like a 5-year-old. Okay, I can make a different choice now. When it becomes conscious, we can start to make different choices. And I want to just add this in, if I can, that when women reach menopause, we often naturally resolve many of our constellations in the territory because now we're switching from that female perspective we've had since we were born to that more slightly male perspective.
Right.
And that solves a lot of our programs, in which case we can become much more balanced. And even if we aren't in menopause, we're younger than that. Once we learn this and observe ourselves, we can develop new skills and new perspectives to change our behavior and react differently. So it's empowering all the way around. When you can just balance out your constellations instead of resolve them, but you balance them, you're going to be happier and healthier, and you're going to love your life better than you do now. And others will respond differently. When we become the lighthouse, everything around us changes as well.
Absolutely. And also the whole while things are changing like this, you're also experiencing the physical symptoms of it at the same time, right?
Yes, yes, but less so. And if you catch it quickly, there's nothing. You won't find anything
But even
physically.
like that menopause thing. So this is one of the things with Tanya, when I talk to people and they're going, they're all this this and this and this, I'm like, well, are you open to a different perspective? Because that change in perspective, we always attach it to all the same thing.
Right. Right. So when we can shift our perspective in menopause, when we're going through all the symptoms, know that it's the resolution of all your biological programs you've been running. And when you know that, you can see them differently. Your body's not attacking you. It's not out to get you. It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to find the wisdom and the way to move you through this period where you are balancing and solving those programs, those issues you've had for decades.
And if you make that connection, will that shorten the length through which you're going through those symptoms?
That's what we're seeing now. Yes,
Okay.
that is what
Oh,
we're seeing.
so amazing. And
It's that.
thank you so much. You are a gift to this world to help people get more curious, be less afraid, gain more empowerment, raise their children. There's so many ways that this work impacts. So I thank you so much for sharing your time with me today.
You're so welcome, and thank you so much for all that you're doing because this is the power of us all working together is
Yeah,
that it will make a difference on this planet, and that's what we need. So thank you, Sasha.
thank you. Okay, everybody, share this podcast episode. This is episode 99, just so you know. Uh,
Woo!
and so share this around because the more that we understand this, the more everything shifts in our life, like everything. And I know it sounds crazy and we get so attached to the thing that we think is causing whatever we're dealing with. What if it's not the thing?
Right.
What if it's in you? So amazing information. So please share this, everybody. Find it on, like I said, Instagram, Spotify, not Instagram. Follow me on Instagram at Sasha K Says for more information in the future. But Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, YouTube, maybe, maybe not, BitChute, and find it there. And until next time, everybody, be well.